In this lesson, we're going to take a look at the Native Americans that lived on the Great Plains in the mid-1800s and what happened to them. Here on this map, we can see the Great Plains are largely in the central part of the United States, and you can see by the colors are divided into two distinct areas. The beige area in the eastern plains are wetter than the orange area in the western plains, and this is going to result in Native Americans living in these areas doing two different types of things for survival. The plains itself is largely flat, grassy, and treeless area that exists throughout the central part of the United States. Let's take a look at the two distinct groups that lived on the plains, although there were many different groups of Native Americans that lived on the plains. The groups that lived in the eastern plains largely subsisted on farming. The groups that lived on the western plains did not have the option because there was much less rainfall in the western plains, and they survived largely on the buffalo, hunting the buffalo. Both groups, however, used what was available to them for food, clothing, and shelter. We can see here the Native Americans that used the buffalo used every available part of the buffalo, from the skin and bones for clothing and tools to, of course, the meat. These teepees were the homes of Native Americans living on the western plains because they were nomadic in that they followed the buffalo as the buffalo migrated into the southern plains in the winter time and back up towards the northern plains in the summertime. So they created portable houses, and the sides of the teepees were made from the buffalo skins. No matter which Native American group we're talking about on the plains, they had a vibrant culture and religion that was based on nature and respect for the earth. A problem is going to develop as Americans begin to settle on the Great Plains. This photo, or this drawing here, shows Cheyenne Indians attacking workers building the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869. Actually, before we come down here, another example of a drawing with the passing of one of the railroads and Native Americans trying to attack the railroad. The military is going to be called in, and this is going to result in several battles between the United States Army and different Native American groups. These battles taken together were known collectively as the Indian Wars, and ultimately the Native American groups are going to be forced to sign treaties where they give up their lands, and they're going to be placed on smaller areas of land called reservations. This map shows that what was essentially all Native American land prior to this period in time in the middle 1850s, now by 1890, all of the Native Americans that roamed through the entire Midwest and Far West were placed in the areas you see on this map in blue. Those are different reservations that different Native American groups were placed on, and this had the effect of freeing up the large portion of land in the Great Plains and the West for settlement by Americans. As this period of Indian removal begins to wind down, once the majority of Native American groups are placed on reservations, Congress comes up with the idea that the Native American groups should be assimilated, and the legislation was known as the Dawes Act. This legislation, its intended purpose was to assimilate Native Americans, to get them to become farmers, more like Americans. Each Native American family was given a plot of land to farm on the reservation. However, this is going to become a complete failure for the reasons that you see listed. Many of the Native American groups were buffalo hunting groups who weren't interested in farming. In addition, the land that they were put on was land that most Americans didn't want because it wasn't suitable for doing much of anything, which is why the reservations were created where they were, and the land was then given to the Native American groups. As a result, many of the Native Americans simply sold their land to speculators, and the result is that the reservations are going to shrink in size. The land that was arable land would be sold off to Americans. The Native Americans would be left with even less than they had before. So, to sum up then, Indians that lived on the plains had a vibrant culture. Eastern Plains Indians were largely farmers. Western Plains Indians were largely buffalo hunters. As Americans began to settle on the plains, conflicts are going to develop, which is going to result in the U.S. Army rounding up the Native American groups and placing them on reservations. This is a long, slow process that's going to result in many deaths. Then Congress is going to pass the Dawes Act in an attempt to assimilate Native Americans, and this is not going to work. So unfortunately, the situation by the 1890s for Plains Indians is not a good one at all.